The alarm screamed through the massive halls of the Galactic Council building. Deep in space, far from Earth, alien beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were about to receive a message that would change everything. Communications. Officer Veltar sat at his control station, his 8 tentacles dancing across holographic displays. He had decoded millions of messages from across the galaxy, but something about this one made his skin crawl. The signal was weak, desperate, and coming from a tiny blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. He read the message again, his voice shaking as he spoke to his assistant. It says they call themselves humans. Their planet is about to be hit by a massive space rock. They need help immediately. The message was simple, but terrifying. An entire world with 8 billion living beings was facing complete destruction. A giant asteroid, bigger than mountains, was heading straight for their home. They had only 72 days before impact. Veltar quickly sent the message to the council chambers, where the most powerful beings in the galaxy made decisions that affected trillions of lives. The Great Hall was enormous, with representatives from hundreds of different alien species sitting in floating chairs that adjusted to their unique body shapes. Council. Speaker Thane received the data on his personal display. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His species had lived for over 50,000 years and considered themselves the wisest in the galaxy. He looked at Earth's location on the star map and dismissed it immediately. Primitive, he muttered, scrolling through the technical data. The humans still used basic rocket fuel and radio waves. They had barely learned to leave their own atmosphere. To Thane, they were nothing more than clever animals playing with fire. He stood up, his voice echoing through the chamber. Members of the council, we have received another distress call from a developing world. The species calls itself human, and they face natural extinction from an asteroid impact. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Most delegates barely looked up from their own business. Extinction events happened all the time throughout the galaxy. It was simply how the universe worked. This is merely another natural selection event, Thane continued, his tone cold and matter-of-fact. The universe has its own way of maintaining balance. Weak species die out, and stronger ones survive. This is the natural order. But one voice spoke up from the crowd. Ambassador Kira belonged to a species called the Elfin, known throughout the galaxy for their kindness and wisdom. Her feathers shimmered blue and gold as she stood to address the council. Speaker Thane, perhaps we should consider helping them. 8 billion lives is not a small number. Surely we have the technology too. Thane cut her off with a sharp gesture. Ambassador Kira, the preservation protocols are absolutely clear. We do not interfere with natural evolutionary processes. These protocols have kept the galaxy stable for over 100,000 years. The preservation protocols were ancient laws that prevented advanced civilizations from helping primitive ones. The council believed that interference would upset the natural balance of the universe. Species either evolved and survived on their own, or they disappeared forever. But surely, Kira pressed on, we could make an exception. The humans show remarkable unity in their message. They speak as one voice for their entire planet. Thane's eyes grew cold. The protocols exist for good reason, Ambassador. Every time we have interfered with natural selection in the past, it has led to disaster. These humans will either find their own solution or perish. That is not our decision to make. The vote was quick and unanimous, except for Kira's lone dissent. The human distress signal would be filed away in the archives, just another record of a species that could not save itself. As the council moved on to discuss trade, agreements, and territorial disputes, none of them realized they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The humans were not like other species they had encountered. They did not accept fate quietly. They did not give up when faced with impossible odds. Far away on Earth, the humans had not waited for an answer to their desperate message. They were already working, already fighting. already proving that sometimes the universe's natural order needed to be challenged. Dr. Huck had not slept in 3 days. His eyes burned as he stared at the computer screens showing data from telescopes around the world. The coffee cup in his hand had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. Numbers and calculations filled every monitor in Seoul's Planetary Defense Center, a building that had been constructed in just 2 weeks after the asteroid was discovered. Status report from Moscow, his assistant called out, her voice cutting through the constant hum of machinery. Dr. Anya says they have converted 60% of their nuclear weapons. The charges are being modified to push the asteroid instead of destroying it. Huck nodded, making notes on his tablet. This was unprecedented in human history. Countries that had been enemies for decades were now working together like parts of a single machine. Nuclear weapons that were designed to destroy cities were being turned into tools of salvation. The screens around him showed a live feed from Cape Canaveral, where Engineer Tay was overseeing the launch of massive rockets. These were not ordinary space missions. Each rocket carried specially designed engines that would attach to the asteroid and slowly push it off course. The engineering challenges were enormous, but somehow humanity was solving problems that should have taken years to figure out. "Sir, we have confirmation from the Sahara project," another technician reported. Dr. Su's electromagnetic launchers are online and functioning perfectly. Hugh switched his main screen to show the desert installation. Where once there had been empty sand, now there were thousands of solar panels stretching to the horizon. The energy they collected powered massive electromagnetic cannons that could fire projectiles into space at incredible speeds. It looked like something from a science fiction movie, but it was real, and it was working. What amazed Huck most was not the technology itself, but how quickly it had all come together. When the asteroid was first detected, every government on Earth had received the same message: work together or die together. There had been no arguments, no political debates, no demands for special treatment. Humanity had simply decided to survive. High above Earth's atmosphere, hidden behind advanced cloaking technology, Ambassador Kira watched these developments with growing astonishment. Her small observation ship recorded everything as humans performed what she considered impossible. "They are actually attempting to fight the asteroid," she whispered to her aide. A young Alphen named Zeta, her blue and gold feathers rustled with nervous energy as she studied the data streaming across her displays. Zeta looked confused. "But Ambassador, that makes no sense. The asteroid is 15 kilometers wide. It contains more mass than some moons. No species has ever successfully deflected something that large." Kira nodded slowly. In her 300 years of diplomatic service, she had witnessed the destruction of 17 different civilizations. Some had tried to evacuate their populations to other worlds. Others had simply accepted their fate and spent their final days in prayer or celebration. But never, in all of galactic recorded history, had any species attempted to physically move a planet-killing asteroid. "Look at their coordination," Kira said, pointing to the tactical display. "Every major nation on their planet is contributing resources. They have unified their entire species around this single goal." The data was remarkable. The humans had somehow managed to combine their military technology, their space programs, their scientific research, and their industrial capacity into one massive effort. Countries that had been at war just months earlier were now sharing their most classified weapons technology. "But why not evacuate?" Zeta asked. "Surely they could save some of their population by sending colony ships to other worlds," Kira studied the human communications they had intercepted, because they refused to abandon their home. "Every transmission we monitor speaks of saving Earth, not escaping from it. They would rather die fighting than live as refugees." The asteroid, designated 2157 Omega by Earth's scientists, was a monster of rock and ice hurtling through space at incredible speed. It had formed billions of years ago in the outer reaches of their solar system, and now gravity had sent it on a collision course with Earth. The impact would release energy equivalent to millions of nuclear bombs, enough to kill every living thing on the planet. But the humans were not accepting this fate quietly. Prime Minister Chun's voice echoed from hidden speakers throughout Seoul's command center. His address was being broadcast to every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth. Standing in an underground bunker beneath the capital, he looked directly into the camera with absolute determination. "My fellow humans," he began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. 72 hours ago, we learned that our world was going to end. Today, we begin the fight to prove that prediction wrong. Dr. Huck paused his work to listen, along with billions of other people around the world. "We will not go quietly into the dark," Jun continued. "We will not accept extinction as inevitable. Today, humanity fights for tomorrow, and we fight together." The moment had arrived. At exactly 8 in the morning, Greenwich Mean Time, humanity launched the most ambitious rescue mission in Earth's history. Dr. Huck stood in the Seoul Command Center, his hands gripping the console as he watched dozens of screens showing the coordinated attack on the asteroid. "First wave launching now," reported the technician beside him. On the main display, they could see nuclear rockets streaking through space toward the massive rock that threatened all life on Earth. These were not weapons of war anymore, but tools of survival, each one precisely timed to explode at exactly the right moment. The explosions began like deadly fireworks in the darkness of space. Each nuclear charge had been calculated down to the smallest detail. Too early, and the energy would be wasted. Too late, and the asteroid would continue its deadly path toward Earth. Dr. Huck had spent weeks checking and rechecking every number, knowing that 8 billion lives depended on his mathematics being perfect. "Electromagnetic launchers firing," came the report from the Sahara Desert facility. Dr. Su's massive cannons sent projectiles racing through space at impossible speeds. Each impact was small, but together they began to slowly push the asteroid off its collision course. From her hidden observation post, Ambassador Kira watched with amazement as the human plan unfolded. Her instruments showed the asteroid's path changing, degree by tiny degree. It was working. Somehow, these primitive beings were actually moving a mountain-sized rock through the power of their combined will. "Status report," Dr. Huck called out, sweat dripping down his face despite the air conditioning. "Trajectory shift confirmed," his assistant announced. "The asteroid is moving off course. Impact probability dropping to 0. Cheers erupted throughout the command center, but Dr. Huck held up his hand for silence. "It's not over yet. We need to track its path for the next 6 hours to be certain." Those 6 hours felt like 6 days. Around the world, billions of people held their breath as scientists confirmed what seemed impossible. The asteroid missed Earth by just 30,000 kilometers, close enough that telescopes could see it clearly as it passed by like a silent, deadly visitor. But the humans had paid a price for their victory. The asteroid's near miss had pulled on Earth's oceans and shaken its crust. Massive tsunamis crashed into coastlines around the world. Earthquakes toppled buildings and cracked open roads. Millions of people lost their homes, and thousands lost their lives. Ambassador Kira expected what always happened next. She had seen it on countless worlds throughout the galaxy. After a major disaster, civilizations typically fell apart. Countries blamed each other for the damage. Resources became scarce, leading to wars and conflicts. The survivors usually spent decades fighting over what remained of their broken world, but humanity did something completely different. President Lee appeared on every television screen around the world, just hours after the asteroid passed. Standing in the emergency command center beneath Seoul, she looked tired but determined. "My fellow humans," she began, "we have faced extinction and survived. Now we face our next challenge, rebuilding our world to be stronger than ever before. She announced the Global Recovery Initiative, a plan that seemed impossible even after everything they had just accomplished. Every nation would share their resources freely. Countries with undamaged infrastructure would help those that had been hit hardest. Scientists would work together to develop new technologies for the changed world. Dr. Su's fusion reactors, originally built to power the electromagnetic launchers, were quickly converted to provide clean energy for reconstruction efforts. Cities that had been destroyed were rebuilt with better designs that could withstand future disasters. Dr. Anya led teams of agricultural specialists who developed new crops that could grow in the slightly altered climate caused by the asteroids' gravitational effects. Instead of fighting over food, nations worked together to ensure everyone had enough to eat. "This is remarkable," Ambassador Kira transmitted to the Galactic Council, her voice filled with wonder. "Every other species I have observed becomes weaker after a major crisis. The humans are becoming stronger." She watched as Earth's cities rose from the rubble, more advanced than before. The cooperation that had saved them from the asteroid continued as they rebuilt their civilization. Technologies that should have taken decades to develop were being perfected in months. The humans seemed to have discovered something that no other species in the galaxy understood. Instead of being weakened by adversity, they were strengthened by it. Each challenge they faced together made their bonds stronger and their determination more powerful. Within 1 year, Earth's civilization had not only recovered from the disaster, but had advanced far beyond where they had been before the asteroid crisis. Their space technology, their energy systems, their medical knowledge, and their communication networks had all improved at a speed that seemed impossible. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Council began to take notice of the small blue planet in the unremarkable solar system. Humanity had announced its presence to the universe, not through conquest or colonization, but through pure determination to survive and thrive together. The silver ship descended through Earth's blue sky like a falling star, its hull gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Ambassador Kira felt her heart beating faster as her vessel approached the landing site outside Geneva. 3 years had passed since she first watched humanity defy the impossible, and now she was about to meet them, face to face. The landing pad had been constructed specifically for this moment. Humans had somehow intercepted and decoded Elfin ship specifications, then built a perfect landing facility in just 2 weeks. As her ship touched down with barely a whisper, Kira marveled at the precision of their engineering. "Ambassador, the humans are waiting," her aide, Zeta, announced, checking the atmospheric readings. "The air is safe to breathe, and they have provided translation devices." Kira smoothed her blue and gold feathers and walked down the landing ramp. What she saw took her breath away. The human delegation stood in perfect formation, dressed in formal attire that somehow managed to be both respectful and distinctly human. They had researched Althon customs and arranged themselves according to diplomatic protocols that some species took centuries to learn. At the front of the group stood Dr. Min, a woman with intelligent eyes and graying hair, who had been appointed as Earth's first director of xenological affairs. As Kira approached, Dr. Min stepped forward and spoke in perfect Althon, her pronunciation flawless. "Greetings, honored Ambassador Kira of the Althon people. We welcome you to Earth with open hearts and minds. Your presence brings great honor to our world." Kira's feathers rustled with surprise. The traditional greeting was complex, involving subtle tonal variations that most species never mastered. Yet this human had learned it perfectly from intercepted communications in just a few months. "The honor is mine, Dr. Min," Kira replied in English, having spent months learning the human language. "Your species has impressed the galaxy with your recent achievements." The negotiations began immediately in a specially constructed building that combined human and Althin architectural preferences. Kira had expected the talks to take weeks, as they did with most new civilizations. Instead, the humans absorbed information at an incredible rate. Dr. Hugh, the same scientist who had calculated the asteroid deflection, presented mathematical theories that made Kira's scientific advisors whisper among themselves in amazement. His equations suggested new ways of traveling through space that could revolutionize galactic transportation. These calculations, Kira's chief scientist said quietly, they challenge some of our most basic assumptions about physics. How did they develop such advanced theories so quickly? Engineer Tay demonstrated propulsion concepts that seemed to blend human creativity with principles they could only have learned from intercepted alien transmissions. His designs were crude by galactic standards, but showed a level of innovation that impressed even Kira's experienced diplomatic team. Your species learns remarkably fast, Kira observed during a break in the negotiations. Most civilizations take decades to understand galactic political structures. You seem to grasp them instinctively. Dr. Min smiled modestly. We have had practice working together during the asteroid crisis. Cooperation and rapid learning became necessary for survival. As the days passed, Kira found herself increasingly impressed by human efficiency and adaptability. They understood trade protocols, diplomatic procedures, and technological principles with a speed that seemed impossible. Their questions were insightful, their proposals practical, and their grasp of galactic politics surprisingly sophisticated. On the final day of negotiations, Kira made an offer that she had never made to a newly contacted species. Ambassador Kira speaks for the Galactic Council, she announced formally. We offer humanity immediate membership in the galactic community, with full voting rights and access to our trade networks. It was an unprecedented honor. Most species had to prove themselves for decades before being offered council membership. The humans had earned this recognition in just 3 years through their remarkable display of unity and capability. But President Lee's response shocked everyone in the room. Ambassador Kira, we are deeply honored by this generous offer, she said, standing to address the gathering. However, humanity must respectfully decline immediate membership. Kira's feathers fluffed with surprise. Every species she had ever encountered desperately wanted galactic recognition and the prestige that came with council membership. President Lee continued, her voice calm and thoughtful. We appreciate the honor, but humanity needs more time to mature. We are still learning about ourselves and our place in the universe. We would not want to burden the galaxy with our inexperience or make decisions that could harm others due to our lack of wisdom. The room fell silent. Kira had seen species go to war for the chance at council membership, yet these humans were turning it down out of humility and concern for others. We would prefer to earn our place gradually, Dr. Min added. We want to be ready to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization, not just demand a seat at the table. Kira found this humility more impressive than any display of power or technology. In her centuries of diplomatic service, she had never encountered a species that prioritized readiness over prestige, responsibility over recognition. Fascinating, she noted in her personal log that night. They understand that true strength comes from wisdom, not authority. Captain Hoon knew he was going to die the moment the alien ships appeared on his sensors. The new Soul was humanity's newest colony ship, carrying 40,000 people to establish Earth's first settlement beyond the solar system. They were farmers, teachers, engineers, and children, all dreaming of building a new life among the stars. Now they were trapped. The Scart H. Pirates had emerged from hyperspace like demons from the darkness, their black warships surrounding the defenseless colony vessel. Hoon had heard stories about these raiders his entire life. They were the most feared criminals in the galaxy, known for their cruelty and their absolute rule. No survivors, no mercy. Captain, they're demanding we surrender, his communications officer reported, her voice shaking with fear. They want our cargo, and they want the colonists. Hoon closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the families sleeping in the passenger compartments below. Children who would never see their new home. Parents who had sacrificed everything for this chance at a better life. Send the distress signal to Earth, he ordered. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we tried. The message raced through space at the speed of light, carrying news that would change everything. On Luna Command, the moon base that served as humanity's military headquarters, Fleet Admiral Park received the transmission while reviewing supply reports. Her coffee cup slipped from her hands as she read the tactical assessment. 40,000 colonists, she whispered, staring at the numbers on her screen. Dear God, 40,000 people. She immediately contacted President Lee, who was in a late-night meeting with her cabinet. The president's face appeared on the holographic display, showing the strain of leadership that had aged her beyond her years. Admiral Park, what's the situation? Madam President, the new Soul has been captured by Scarred H pirates. They're demanding ransom for the colonists. But ... Park's voice trailed off. But what, Admiral? The ransom is impossible. They want our entire strategic metal reserves, plus exclusive trading rights to our outer colonies. It would bankrupt Earth and leave us defenseless. President Lee was quiet for a long moment, her face reflecting the terrible weight of the decision. Before her, in the background, her advisors whispered among themselves, calculating costs and discussing diplomatic options. They expect us to negotiate, Admiral Park continued. Every species in the galaxy does. They pay ransom, sacrifice some to save others, except that some losses are inevitable. President Lee's expression hardened. Then they don't understand. Humanity, Admiral, issued the declaration. Within hours, humanity's response echoed across every communication network in the galaxy. The message was simple, direct, and unlike anything the galactic community had ever heard from a young civilization. To all who receive this transmission, an attack upon one human is an attack upon all humans. We do not negotiate with criminals. We do not abandon our own. The Scarred H pirates have made a grave mistake. The Earth Defense Fleet had been humanity's pride and joy. Built from the advanced technology they had developed during the asteroid crisis, 12 warships that represented the finest engineering and determination the human species could produce. They had never been tested in real combat, but they were about to face the galaxy's most notorious enemies. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the battleship Incheon, named after a city that had been rebuilt after the asteroid crisis. Around her, the crew prepared for a journey that everyone knew might be their last. They were heading to the Kepler system, deep in pirate-controlled space, to face an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for generations. Admiral, the fleet is ready, reported her first officer. All ships report battle-ready status. Park nodded, looking out at the stars that held both her people's dreams and their nightmares. Then let's go bring our people home. From her observation post, Ambassador, Kira watched the human fleet depart with growing concern. She had sent urgent warnings to the Galactic Council, trying to explain the significance of what was happening. The humans are mobilizing for war, she reported. They refuse to pay ransom or negotiate. They're sending their entire battle fleet against the Scarred H. Council Speaker Thane's response came through clearly, tinged with cold satisfaction. They'll be slaughtered, Ambassador. The Scarth have been raiding trade routes for over 2 centuries. They've destroyed fleets 3 times the size of humanity's pathetic navy. Kira stared at the departing human ships, remembering how they had defied impossible odds to save their planet. Perhaps, Speaker Thane, but I've learned not to underestimate them. This will teach them proper humility, Thane continued. After they lose their fleet, they'll understand their place in the Galactic Order. But as Kira watched the Incheon and its escort ships disappear into hyperspace, she felt a strange certainty growing in her chest. The humans had surprised the galaxy once before. Something told her they were about to do it again. Kepler Station. hung in space like a deadly spider in its web, surrounded by floating rocks and debris that had protected it for over 200 years. The massive fortress had been carved out of the largest asteroid in the field, its surface bristling with weapon systems and shield generators. No military force in galactic history had ever successfully attacked it. Pirate Lord Grix stood in his command center, watching the human fleet approach on his tactical displays. His scarred face twisted into a cruel smile as he counted the enemy ships. 12 vessels against his fortress, and over 100 pirate ships. It seemed like a joke. "Look at them," he growled to his officers, his voice carrying the arrogance of someone who had never lost a battle. 12 little ships thinking they can challenge the mighty Scart H. We've destroyed entire civilizations with less effort. His lieutenant, a reptilian creature with yellow eyes, hissed in agreement. "Should we destroy them immediately, Lord Grix, or play with them first?" Grix waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Let them come closer. I want them to see the hopelessness of their situation before we crush them. Maybe then they'll understand why the galaxy fears us." But Admiral Park had no intention of playing by the pirates' rules. Standing on the bridge of the engine, she studied the tactical situation with the same careful attention she had given to the asteroid crisis years earlier. The conventional approach would be suicide, a direct assault against such overwhelming odds. "Deploy the gravitational manipulators," she ordered, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. The bridge crew exchanged glances. This technology had been developed from the same principles they used to deflect the asteroid, but it had never been tested in combat. 12 devices, one from each ship, began to generate invisible fields that could bend space itself. "Target the asteroid field," Park continued. "Turn their protection into our weapon." On Kepler Station, Grix watched in confusion as the human ships spread out among the floating rocks. "What are they doing? Why aren't they attacking?" His question was answered moments later. The asteroids around the station began to move, not randomly, but with deliberate purpose. Rocks the size of buildings accelerated toward the pirate fortress, their paths bent by humanity's gravitational technology. "Impossible," Grix roared as the first asteroid smashed into his outer shields. "They're moving the entire field." The human fleet danced through the chaos they had created, their ships weaving between redirected asteroids, while the pirates scrambled to respond. The Scart H had prepared for conventional attacks, not for having their own defensive barrier turned against them. Admiral Park watched as her plan unfolded perfectly. "Launch boarding pods. Captain Jin, you're clear for assault." Captain Jin had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission, leading a team of 200 Marines. He would have to get inside the station and rescue the hostages while the battle raged around them. His boarding pod shot through the asteroid storm like a bullet, its hull glowing from impacts with smaller debris. "Breach successful," Jin reported as his pod punched through the station's outer hull. "We're inside." What followed was unlike any battle the pirates had ever experienced. Jin's Marines moved through the station's corridors like ghosts, their adaptive armor shifting color to match the shadows. Their plasma weapons cut through pirate defenses with surgical precision. The Scart H had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved countless species, but they had never faced an enemy like this. These humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and tactical brilliance that overwhelmed defenders who had grown complacent from centuries of easy victories. Sector 7 secured. Jin's voice crackled over the comm system. "We've found the prisoners. 300 beings from 12 different species." "Impossible," Grix snarled as reports poured in from across his station. His forces were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. "You're barely evolved. Your species has only been in space for a few years." Captain Jin appeared in the command center doorway, his plasma rifle trained on the pirate lord. His armor had taken damage from the fighting, but his eyes burned with determination. "Evolution isn't about age," Jin replied, his voice steady as he approached the cowering pirate. "It's about adaptation, and humans adapt very quickly." The battle for Kepler Station lasted exactly 6 hours. When the last pirate ship surrendered or fled, Admiral Park surveyed the results with quiet satisfaction. The fortress that had terrorized the galaxy for generations lay in ruins. The mighty Scarth fleet had been scattered or destroyed, but the real victory was in the rescued prisoners. Not just the 40,000 human colonists, but 300 beings from across the galaxy who had been held as slaves. Species that had given up their people for lost watched in amazement as humans returned what others had written off as casualties of pirate cruelty. News of the victory spread across hyperspace communication networks faster than the human fleet could return home. For the first time in galactic history, someone had not just defeated the Scarth pirates, but had done it to save others, rather than for conquest or profit. The galaxy began to realize that humanity was unlike any species they had ever encountered. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every major news network, every communication hub, every trading post buzzed with the same incredible story. The headline of the Galactic Herald, the galaxy's most respected news source, said it all in bold letters that seemed to glow on screens. Across 1,000 worlds, humans annihilate Scarth H pirates, ancient menace destroyed in single battle. On the peaceful world of Althan Prime, Merchant Captain Vel was loading cargo onto his trading ship when his assistant rushed over with a datapad. Vel's hands shook as he read the report. For 3 generations, his family had run cargo between the outer colonies, always in fear of pirate attacks. His grandfather had lost 2 ships to the Scarth H. His father had paid countless ransoms to keep their crews alive. "Is this real?" Vel whispered, reading the article again. "The Scarth H fleet is actually gone." His assistant nodded, tears streaming down her face. "All of it, Captain. Kepler Station destroyed, their entire armada scattered. The humans did what no one thought was possible." For the first time in decades, Vel began planning trade routes through sectors that had been too dangerous to enter. The galaxy's shipping lanes, blocked by pirate activity for centuries, were suddenly open for business. Across the galaxy, on the industrial world of Corvan, Mining Director Zeph was having a very different conversation. He stood in his office, staring at security contracts that had cost his company millions of credits each year. These payments had gone to various mercenary groups who promised to protect mining operations from pirate raids. "Cancel them," he told his financial advisor. "All of them, sir." "Are you certain? Without security protection, we'll be vulnerable too." "To what?" Zeph interrupted, pointing at the news reports flooding his screens. "The humans have destroyed the biggest pirate organization in the galaxy. And look at this." He pulled up new shipping reports. Human patrol ships are already moving through the commercial lanes, offering free protection to any peaceful vessel. The changes were happening everywhere. Trade routes that had been abandoned for decades suddenly came alive with merchant traffic. Colonies that had been isolated by pirate blockades began receiving supply ships again. The galaxy's economy, which had been strangled by criminal activity for generations, began to breathe freely for the first time. Ambassador Kira watched these developments from her chambers in the Galactic Council building. Her screens showed real-time data from across known space, and every number told the same story. Pirate attacks had dropped by 70% in just 2 weeks. Trade volume was up by 40% and climbing. Insurance rates for commercial shipping had fallen to historic lows. "Remarkable," she murmured, studying the economic reports. "In less than a month, the humans have accomplished what the Council couldn't achieve in 1,000 years. But the most significant change was in humanity's message to the galaxy." President Lee's broadcast reached every world, every space station, every colony in the known universe. Standing in the same underground bunker where she had announced humanity's fight against the asteroid, she addressed billions of beings across hundreds of species. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying the same determination that had saved Earth years earlier. Humanity extends its protection to all peaceful species. We believe that every civilization has the right to exist without fear, without paying tribute to criminals, and without sacrificing their people to pirates. The message was revolutionary. For millennia, the galaxy had operated on a simple principle: the strong protected the weak in exchange for tribute and submission. The Galactic Council collected taxes and fees in return for maintaining order. But humanity was offering something completely different. Dr. Min's diplomatic teams worked around the clock, establishing what humans called mutual defense pacts with grateful species. Unlike the Council's protection system, these agreements were based on cooperation rather than submission. Each species contributed what they could, and all benefited from collective security. The elf, grateful for the end of pirate attacks on their trade routes, offered their advanced medical technology. The Corvin shared their mining expertise and industrial capacity. Dozens of other species contributed their unique skills and knowledge to the growing alliance. In the council chambers, Speaker Thane watched these developments with growing alarm. His faction had maintained power for thousands of years through the traditional system of protection and tribute. Now humanity was offering an alternative that made the Council's approach seem outdated and exploitative. They're building an alternative power structure, Thane warned the assembled delegates, his voice tight with anger. This threatens everything we've established. If species can get protection without paying tribute, why do they need the Council at all? Ambassador Kira listened to his concerns with carefully hidden satisfaction. She had watched the Council ignore suffering and exploitation for centuries, always claiming that interference would upset the galactic balance. Perhaps, she replied carefully, choosing her words with diplomatic precision, that's not entirely unwelcome. The old system clearly wasn't working if pirates could terrorize trade routes for generations without consequence. The chamber fell, silent as delegates considered her words. Some nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The galaxy was changing, and everyone knew it. Humanity's influence was expanding beyond military might into economic and political realms. Their concept of collective security, based on mutual aid rather than tribute, was attracting more species every day. For the first time in galactic history, someone was offering protection without demanding submission in return. The ceremony on Luna Base was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Representatives from 37 different species gathered in the great assembly hall that humans had built specifically for this historic moment. The room buzzed with dozens of different languages, as beings who had never worked together before, prepared to sign an agreement that would change everything. President Lee stood at the central podium, looking out at the diverse crowd of delegates. There were the tall, graceful Alphon with their shimmering feathers, the stocky, powerful Corvin with their metallic skin, dozens of other species, each bringing their own unique abilities and perspectives to the table. Today, we create something, Newly announced, her voice carrying clearly through the translation devices. Not an empire built on conquest, not a council demanding tribute, but a true alliance based on mutual respect and shared protection. The document they were about to sign was called the Human Accords, though humanity had insisted that every member species help write it. Unlike the thousands of pages of complex legal language that made up the Galactic Council's charter, the Accords fit on just 12 pages and were written in simple terms that anyone could understand. Admiral Park, now serving as the Alliance's military coordinator, explained the core principles to the assembled delegates. Her words were direct and honest, without the diplomatic double-talk that usually filled such meetings. The rules are simple, she said, standing tall in her dress uniform. When someone calls for help, we answer. When someone threatens innocent life, we respond. No committees to debate for months, no bureaucrats to approve every decision. No political games while people suffer. The contrast with the Galactic Council couldn't have been clearer. The Council required member species to submit formal requests that went through multiple review processes. Emergency aid often took weeks to approve, and usually came with conditions and fees attached. But the Accords promised something revolutionary: immediate response to any threat. With no questions asked and no payment required, Dr. Sue had already begun implementing the technological exchange programs that made the alliance so attractive. Her teams worked with scientists from every member species, sharing knowledge freely and developing new innovations at an incredible pace. On the Althon agricultural worlds, human farming techniques had increased crop yields by 60%. The vertical growing systems developed during Earth's post-asteroid recovery were perfectly suited to the Althon's densely populated planets. Meanwhile, human spaceships now incorporated Corvin engineering advances that made them faster and more efficient. The heavy industrial knowledge that the Corvin had developed over millennia complemented humanity's innovative designs perfectly. "It's remarkable," observed Captain Vel, who had become the Althon representative to the Alliance. "Instead of hoarding our knowledge like the Council encourages, we're all growing stronger by sharing it." The economic results were staggering traditional galactic powers. Free trade within the Accords had created an explosion of prosperity that made the Council's tribute-based system look primitive and exploitative. Species that had struggled to pay their Council fees were suddenly experiencing unprecedented growth and abundance. Manufacturing output in Accord space had increased by 200% in just 6 months. Scientific research projects that would have taken decades under the old system were being completed in years. Most importantly, ordinary citizens were living better lives, with more opportunities and greater security than ever before. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Speaker Thane watched these developments with growing fury. His faction had maintained power for thousands of years by keeping species dependent on Council protection. Now humanity was proving that there was a better way. "These upstarts threaten everything we've built," he declared to his supporters, his voice shaking with rage. "Their naive idealism will breed chaos across the galaxy. Someone must maintain order." But Ambassador Kira had access to the same economic data that was circulating through diplomatic channels. The numbers told a completely different story than Thane's warnings. "Crime rates in Accord space have dropped by 80%, she reported to the Council. "Economic growth is at historic highs. Scientific advancement is accelerating beyond anything we've seen before. Where exactly is this chaos you're worried about?" The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The human Accords weren't creating chaos. They were creating the most stable, prosperous region the galaxy had seen in centuries. Species were choosing cooperation over competition, and everyone was benefiting. President Lee's final address to the Galactic Council was broadcast across the galaxy, carried by every major news network and communication system. Her words were measured but carried an unmistakable warning. "Humanity asks nothing of the Galactic Council," she said, looking directly into the camera. "We don't seek to replace you or compete with you. But we want to make one thing absolutely clear. We will never abandon those who ask for our help. Any species that wants to join our alliance will be welcomed with open arms." The message was simple, but revolutionary. For the first time in galactic history, species had a choice. They could continue paying tribute to distant bureaucrats, or they could join a partnership based on mutual aid and shared prosperity. The galaxy was watching, and many were beginning to choose humanity's path. The message arrived at Earth's communication centers like a thunderclap of doom. Overlord Malaker's ultimatum was broadcast across every frequency, his voice carrying the arrogance of someone who had crushed civilizations for over 3,000 years. Humans and their pathetic allies, his words echoed through the halls of Luna Base. "You have 7 days to dissolve your so-called Accords and submit to hegemony rule. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why the galaxy has feared us since before your species learned to use fire. The hegemony was ancient beyond imagination. Their empire had existed when Earth was still populated by primitive tribes, and they had built their power through centuries of conquest and intimidation. Their war fleets contained ships the size of small moons, each one capable of destroying entire planets. President Lee sat in the emergency session of the Accord Council, surrounded by representatives from 37 species who were all looking to humanity for guidance. Many were visibly terrified. The delegate from Corvin, a usually brave mining world, was shaking as he spoke. Perhaps we should consider negotiations, he suggested carefully. The hegemony has never been defeated. Their military power is beyond anything we can imagine. Similar voices rose around the chamber. Species that had joined the Accords for protection were now facing an enemy that made the Scarth pirates look like children playing with toys. The smart choice, the safe choice, was to surrender before the killing began. But President Lee's response silenced the room and later echoed across the entire galaxy. Humanity has faced extinction and survived, she declared, her voice carrying the same steel determination that had saved Earth from the asteroid. We will not allow others to suffer what we have overcome. The hegemony may be ancient, but they have never faced an enemy like us. The Battle of Proxima Centauri began at dawn on the 7th day. Overlord Malachor arrived with a fleet that blotted out the stars, his dreadnoughts moving through space like mechanical gods. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, carrying weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been penetrated. Admiral Park commanded the combined Accord fleet from the bridge of her flagship, now called the New Hope. Around her, ships from dozens of different species formed a defensive line that looked pitiful compared to the approaching enemy. Human vessels flew alongside Althan medical ships and Corvin industrial carriers that had been hastily converted for battle. All ships, this is Admiral Park, she broadcast to the fleet. Today we fight not for conquest or glory, but for the right of free beings to live without fear. Show them what we've learned about cooperation. The battle that followed became the stuff of legend. The hegemony dreadnoughts unleashed devastating firepower that lit up space like artificial suns. But Admiral Park's tactical genius turned humanity's weakness into strength. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, the Accord fleet danced through space like a school of fish, each ship supporting the others in an intricate ballet of warfare. Human vessels used their asteroid deflection technology to redirect enemy fire. Althan ships provided medical support that kept damaged vessels fighting. Corvin engineering crews made repairs in the middle of battle that should have been impossible. Every species contributed their unique abilities to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Captain Jin led boarding parties that fought with desperate courage, knowing they were protecting not just their own people, but their new family of allied species. His Marines moved through enemy ships with the same precision they had shown against the pirates. But now they fought for something bigger than revenge. The battle raged for 18 hours. When the plasma finally cleared, the impossible had happened. The mighty hegemony fleet lay in ruins, their dreadnoughts crippled or destroyed. Overlord Malachor's flagship drifted powerless in space, its crew trapped inside a dying vessel. But what happened next revealed humanity's true strength. Instead of leaving their enemies to die, Captain Jin's rescue teams immediately began evacuating the crippled hegemony ships. Human medical teams worked alongside Dr. Min's international corps to treat wounded enemy soldiers with the same care they gave to their own casualties. Overlord Malachor found himself in a human medical facility, his wounds being tended by the same people he had come to destroy. For 3,000 years, he had lived by a simple rule: the strong dominated the weak, and the weak deserved their fate. Why? He asked President Lee when she visited his bedside, his voice filled with confusion that replaced his usual rage. We came here to annihilate you. We would have shown you no mercy. Why are you saving our lives? President Lee sat down beside the bed of her greatest enemy, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had carried the weight of countless lives through an impossible battle. Because every life has value, she replied simply. Even yours. Even your soldiers who were following your orders. That's what makes us different from you. The gesture shattered something fundamental in Malaker's worldview. He had built his empire on the belief that strength came from the ability to destroy. But these humans had shown him something he had never imagined. Strength that came from the choice to preserve life, even the lives of those who wished you harm. Within months, the hegemony began to fragment. Species that had been held in line by fear for millennia suddenly saw an alternative. They watched news reports of human medical teams treating their former enemies, and they began to understand that there was another way to live. One by one, hegemony worlds applied to join the human accords. They were drawn not by the promise of military protection, but by humanity's radical concept that strength could come through compassion rather than conquest. Ambassador Kira watched these developments from her new position as Earth's official liaison to what was now being called the Reformed Galactic Council. The old system of tribute and intimidation was crumbling as more species chose cooperation over domination. Remarkable, she noted in her personal logs. The galaxy has changed forever, but not through conquest or force. They've won through example, by showing others a better way to live. She often thought back to that first desperate SOS transmission that had brought her to Earth's attention. That single message, dismissed by the Council as unimportant, had awakened something in humanity that the galaxy had never seen before, an unshakable belief that no sentient being should face extinction alone. The age of humanity had begun, but it was not an age of human dominance. Instead, it was an age where all species could thrive together, protected by the radical idea that every life had value and every civilization deserved a chance to survive. That single SOS had indeed changed everything, revealing a strength that the galaxy had never imagined, the power of compassion backed by unwavering determination.